messed up hips, messed up knees, stress, anxiety, depression. Everybody in that room comes in there with baggage. Mine's just easier to see.
Hello, boys and girls. Welcome back to Dharma Talk, episode number 11. Okay, how many times have you caught yourself thinking in the middle of a yoga class, this is just harder for me. It's not fair. Okay, maybe it doesn't happen often, but almost everybody has had that thought go through their head at least once. And if you have, this episode is for you because I'm interviewing Michael Fine. Michael talks about his mentor a few times in this interview. Her name is Mary Jarvis, and she has this saying, all you need to have to do this yoga is a spine. And he added on to that saying, 2 arms are optional. Michael lost his arm in a tragic accident several years ago, and it was through the process of recovering from that injury, that life-altering tragic incident, that he found the yoga. So we talk about that whole experience. We talk about readjusting to life after an accident that pushed Michael to a suicide attempt, and the specific yoga sequence that finally provided relief when nothing else could. We talk about the simple yet profound mind shift that got Michael through the trials and tribulations of yoga teacher training after he had already packed his bags and called an Uber to get out of there early. And also, Michael is an advocate for cannabis. So we talk about what Michael and his wife did to earn the hatred of health insurance companies and how they're helping to bring medical cannabis to the people of Illinois suffering from serious conditions. You're going to get a lot out of this interview. Michael is a joy to hear from. Can't wait for you to check it out. Just stick around through these announcements. Yogis, I've got a whole lineup of special events coming your way this summer that I'm excited to share with you. And I'm going to rattle them off in order of most serious to most lighthearted and fun. Okay, first of all, I'm assisting Jared McCann in his 300-hour quote-unquote advanced teacher training at Lighthouse Yoga School in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, this July. Now, it's advanced in the sense that we will be working on sequences that include advanced asanas, but really the more advanced part about it is the intensity of the spiritual practice or sadhana. Every single day is going to start with seated meditation in a group, and you'll take away a practice that you can carry forward for the rest of your life. I did this training myself last year, and this year I'm helping out with it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Next, if you're not really interested in becoming a yoga teacher, you can still do the teacher training, but we also have another option for you, which is a 30-hour intensive over the Labor Day weekend. This one is 4 days of intense practice with posture clinics, yoga philosophy training, and lots of meditation as well. This is a great option if you don't want to make the time or financial investment of a teacher training, but you really want to deepen your practice. And then the last thing I want to share with you is also in July, in between the 2 modules of the teacher training, I'm going to be in Chicago for the We Are Yoga Waycation. It's taking place at 105F, Chicago's original hot yoga studio. But there are going to be yoga classes of all different styles, different teachers teaching all the different classes, and we're going to take excursions too, so it'll be fun. We've got Pitchfork Music Festival going on, Chicago Cubs games, if that appeals to you. Here's the deal. If you enter my promo code HenryWayChai, you can save 10% on a 4-day pass to the studio, but you got to be a first timer to 105F. That's the only catch. Now, you can get the details for all of these events on my website at henrywins.com/events. What's your purpose? What's your vision? What mark will you leave on this planet long after you're gone? I'm Henry Winslow, and you're listening to Dharma Talk, the only podcast where I interview inspirational yogis on how they're changing the world in their own unique ways. Whether you're still searching for your purpose or already walking the path, I hope these stories get you excited to live your Dharma. Hello, Dharma Talk community, and welcome back for another episode. Today I've got a special guest for you. His name is Michael Fine. Michael's life was tragically altered on the morning of April 14th, 2010, when driving to work, he was struck head-on by a truck, resulting in the traumatic amputation of his left arm at the shoulder. After the accident, Michael found some relief from his chronic residual limb pain syndrome through a combination of Hatha Yoga and medical cannabis, both of which he has now championed as a teacher and an advocate. Michael believes that there is no magic bullet to pain relief, but rather a regular regime of various modalities, all working in unison to treat the entire person, body, mind, and spirit. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Henry. My absolute honor to be with you today.
Thank you so much. And I have to say that I'm always inspired by your positivity and your gratitude, especially given the traumatic, life-altering event that I just described in your bio. So I'm looking forward to hearing your perspective on that and how it's changed your life. But first, I always start with the same question for all my guests, and that's this. What does the word Dharma mean to you, and what is your Dharma as you understand it today?
Dharma is is such an interesting concept. As you know, many books have been written in the context of yoga and in my life. As of late, to me, it's really the act of becoming aware of your awareness. To quote my greatest influence in the yoga that I practice, a woman by the name of Mary Jarvis, a self-realization, so to speak. To me, living this yoga isn't just a practice. It's on the mat, off the mat, people that you meet, every contact that you are fortunate enough to cross in your life. I look at those as opportunities. And really, to me, the currency of life is connection. It's not money. It's not things. It's not material wealth. It's the opportunity to connect with one another. People are people, all walks, all shapes, all sizes, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation. None of that really serves to divide us. All those are just different ways to connect us. And this yoga and Dharma, for me, is a mechanism to connect.
To connect, yes. Relationships, connections, so important. And I've had several guests come on here and make a point of saying that what are we doing here? What are we working on? Well, it's definitely not material possessions, because that all goes away at the end. So
exactly.
Yeah. I think that's very smart. So tell me, Michael, what does your yoga practice look like these days? And did you practice yoga before the accident? How has that changed your experience?
No, I never did up until the point of the accident. I grew up in a world of martial arts, which ironically I didn't have any concept of the parallels between the two, especially the type of Hatha Yoga that I practice. The Bikram method is something very martial arty in its 99%, right is 100% wrong type background. But no, I never did up until the point of the accident. So I feel like I found a needle in a stack of needles when I was fortunate enough to stumble across it. After the accident, my balance, figuratively and literally, were off. The literal balance, I would fall all the time. I'd bump into things. When you lose a limb, your whole concept and your whole sense of space and where you fit into it is altered. And a friend of mine at the time was a vinyasa instructor who spent quite a few years studying under Anna Forrest and some other different areas in the yoga world, and came over to my house one day and said, "Look, this is going to help you regain your balance. This is going to help you strengthen, the center of your body, your core. figuratively, literally the whole nine. And she started working with me on some postures, more along those lines at that time, to gain my balance back, my literal balance. It then moved into a hot vinyasa practice. I still feel the left arm as if it was attached to my body. It's phantom pain. It feels as if it's encased in a block of ice and being squeezed all the time. And different changes externally trigger different sensations. External temperature changes, barometric pressure, extreme heat, extreme cold, all serve to exacerbate or change the quality and the quantity of the pain that I feel. The internal triggers that we all feel, stress, anxiety, fear, emotion, also serve to trigger and exacerbate the pain. So I came into that hot practice in the vinyasa series as a mechanism to help with that pain. The heat helped, and I didn't really understand why at first. And I enjoyed the practice. It was very nice and touchy-feely, with some of the greatest music. My heroes in the music world, Sting, Eddie Vedder, Dave Grohl, all these guys were in my yoga room, throughout my series with a nice cold towel on my face when I was done. And when I couldn't do postures, it was, just go in a child's pose, or, when we were doing stuff on the left side where I had an arm balance, I was able to plank and down dog and chaturanga and do all that kind of cool stuff. But when I finished the class, because I only have one wrist, my wrist was like on fire, and I didn't really know whether I should do the right side twice, or I should just sit there and watch everybody, or didn't really, and no one ever really gave me much of an alternative, as I couldn't really do much on my left side when it came to that. I was also at the time, as you mentioned in my intro, or in your intro rather, seeking lots of non-traditional, non-pharmaceutical based, pain relief modalities, such as acupuncture, Reiki, craniosacral therapy, sensory deprivation, flotation, massage therapy, cupping, and on and on and on. And my acupuncturist at the time actually worked out of the basement of a Bikram yoga studio near my home, and she had helped this the guy who owned the place open a bunch of years back. And one day after acupuncture, she said, "Well, why don't you try this yoga? I know you're doing some other yoga too, and I'm like, well, what's the difference between this yoga and the other yoga that I've been doing?" And if someone understands acupuncture, it's a great way to describe it, because she said to me, well, this yoga is kind of like acupuncture that you do on yourself. And as you know, through a series of tourniquet effects that you're cutting off blood flow to every different area of your body, muscles, joints, organs, systems, it's very similar to acupuncture. And I thought it was a great way to describe it as someone who understands the way that acupuncture works. It's very similar. And one day after an acupuncture session, and she had been practicing this style of yoga for about 10 years. So we took a class together, and that was the start of it for me. And from there, it didn't start out wonderfully in the beginning. I hated it. I often describe it as, especially coming from a nice touchy-feely, music-filled, cold towel-filled, big hug-type filled vinyasa background, it was like getting punched in the face. There was no music. It was 105 degrees, 40% humidity. The guy who owned the place was a very classic, Bikram instructor. He emphasized, from the very first day, and I'm really grateful, the stillness between the postures, in the postures, and the savasana, to still your mind. So once you still your mind, you can transform the practice, from a 90-minute exercise class to to a 90-minute open-eyed moving meditation. And it happened for me, I think, a lot sooner than for many, because of the discipline that was initially instilled into me by this first instructor, who coincidentally just recently sold the yoga school about a month and a half ago. And my two dear friends, other teachers who I've been working with in the past, bought the school. So now I'm actually teaching at the school that I first practiced at and discovered this yoga, which is something that's not lost on me. Yeah, I mean, about as full circle comes. And I walk in there every day, and my heart sings. I feel like I'm walking into my home when I walk in there. So it's really a cool full circle closure type scenario with this.
Well, I've got a number of follow-up questions on that series of stories there. But first of all, you mentioned that your balance was thrown off in more ways than one by the accident. So, of course, there was the anatomical, physical aspect there. But I also know from personal correspondence with you that there was also, a depressive episode. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that and how the yoga played in.
Yeah, so about a month and a half, 2 months before the accident, my dad passed away. About 2 months or so after the accident, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. The guy who hit me had no auto insurance. My health insurance company at the time, I was self-employed. I'm a recovering attorney by profession. It's about 10 years, and I'm almost recovered. So as a recovering attorney, I was self-employed in the mortgage business at the time on a new policy, a health insurance policy. This was before the Affordable Care Act was in place, without any of the safeguards that we now enjoy, or hopefully will continue to enjoy. But anyways, so the health insurance company that I had looked at the 6-week stay in the hospital and the 8 surgeries that I had initially, and the 2 more that I had at the end of that same year, to the tune of about a $650,000 bill, and decided that they really didn't want to pay. They did a cost-benefit analysis and said, "Wow, we only took 4 months of this guy's premiums, so why should we pay? It's really, it's not in our best business interest to only make 4 months of premiums and have to pay out all this money." So all of that stuff, aside from being in awful, awful pain, 24/7, really spiraled me down. I was on about 35 pills a day at the time as well. Norco, Vicodin, Oxycontin, methadone, morphine, fentanyl, you name it, I was on it from an opioid narcotic standpoint. Then the nerve blockers, gabapentin, Lyrica, Cymbalta, then the antidepressants, Abilify, Seroquel, side effect meds, more side effect meds, the side effect meds, pills to go to the bathroom, pills to stop going to the bathroom. Really, and I'm not blaming the pills, but they were a big part of all the stuff that was going on in my life at the time. I spent about a month or so of my life downstairs in the basement of my home with my wife and my 2 young boys at that time, 7th grade and 5th grade, while they slept up in their beds with a belt around my neck over a basement door till I passed out. Or in my garage with my car turned on and the door closed, or at the sink in my bathroom with a knife at my wrist, trying to get out of this life. It culminated in an attempt where I took a bottle of pills, and my wife and my oldest son came home and found me, on the kitchen floor. Then I went back into that hospital, the same hospital that I had been at for 6 weeks, that I emerged from as a hero. I went back in a psych ward where they took my belt and my shoelaces, and I was surrounded by, drug addicts and alcoholics, and no judgment, but really like, oh my God, how did I get here, kind of thing. And that was the precursor, by some act of God, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, energy, whatever it is that you want to call it. To me, it's all the same thing. I made it out of that place, and I was looking for a new way forward. And I needed it to be something that was not a pharmaceutical-based modality. I needed it to be something that would lift me up, something that would help me to heal. So when I said before, I feel like I found a needle in a stack of needles with this Hatha Yoga series that I practice. I found a needle in a stack of needles. I tried so many different things and looked through so many different places for, from energy work to this, and many things were out there and many things were helpful, but nothing that I found to date helps me the way that this yoga series does. And, and for me, to quote my mentor once again, when something works every time, no matter what, you call it a universal truth, like gravity. There's not been one time that I've walked into that room in probably around 2,000 classes that I've taken since I started practicing that I haven't felt better when I walked out than when I walked in.
It's a
When
miracle.
something works like that, it's gravity. It's a miracle. But it is and it isn't. It's science. It's real.
Mm-hmm.
It's not touchy-feely. What this is just a series that cuts off blood flow to every different area of your body, muscle, bone, joint, tissue, holds it for 10, 15, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. You release it. Fresh, high-speed oxygenated blood hits those areas, flushes out gunk, plaque, scar tissue, whatever, and your body returns to homeostasis.
Mm-hmm.
And when everything works the way that it should, your liver, your kidney, your spleen, everything works the way that it should, you just feel better. I live at, a 5 to a 7 on that proverbial, 1 to 10 scale that every time you go into a doctor or a hospital, they ask you where it hurts and what number it is. When I walk out of that room, I drop down to somewhere between a 2 and a 5, depending on the day. And it doesn't sound like much, but when you live at a 5 or a 7, and you drop down to a 2 or a 3 or a 4 for a couple of hours, it's
That's huge.
It's addictive, and it is, and it's hard to really describe and emphasize what this means to me. But it's a daily practice for that very reason. It's nothing noble. Okay, I'm no hero. I'm no inspiration. Okay, this is pure pain avoidance for me. Okay, and I came into that room for pain avoidance, plain and simple, to find relief from physical pain. What happened in that process was I found the meditation, the mental, the spiritual clarity with the silver linings in that cloud that turned out to be even greater than the pain relief.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what keeps you going back. That's why people practice this series 20, 30 years, a beginner series of yoga, and they keep coming back again and again and again into a 105-degree room at 40% humidity with no music or touchy-feely stuff, just you in the mirror and a voice. And everybody in that room is suffering. Okay? I don't mean suffering from the class. I mean they're suffering from something, whether it's physical pain, mental pain, frozen shoulders, torn meniscuses, messed up hips, messed up knees, stress, anxiety, depression. Everybody in that room comes in there with baggage. Mine's just easier to see.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, and if I could be someone who's an ambassador to show people that, it's all you need to do. This yoga is a spine. Again, Mary Jarvis. Okay. I added 2 arms are optional. If I could be that person to show people that, too fat, too old, too sick, too weak, too whatever, it doesn't matter. It's not about anything else than going in there and teaching people, okay, I'm nobody's guru. I'm nobody's anything. You're your own guru. Okay. You're your own hero. You go in there. My job is to teach you that you have the ability to heal yourself if you give yourself the right tools to do that, the right nutrition, the right lifestyle, the practice of the series. In and out, day in, day out, your body's natural predisposition, if it's given the right tools, nutrition, water, all the great things that you need, His natural predisposition is to heal. You just have to give it the ability to do so. Our natural predisposition is to heal and be healthy. And that's what that room is. And that's what that podium is for me, is a place to teach people that they have the ability to do it themselves. It's not about a pill. It's not about the next fad diet. It's not about the next, self-help book. You have everything you need to heal, to be happy. And that's what this yoga has given me. So
I appreciate you
I'm honored to
taking,
teach it.
yeah, I appreciate you taking us back to, your darkest hour. I can't imagine that that's easy to revisit even in your memory banks. So thank you for doing that. But now I'm interested in hearing about the pivotal moment, whatever happened, that made the switch in your mind where you no longer wanted to just keep this to yourself. And I know you said that you practiced selfishly for pain avoidance, but at a certain point, you made the decision to be a teacher and advocate for other people to heal their own suffering in whatever form that may take. So what happened there, and take us through that journey, that mental process for you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was, I had been about, almost 5 years into my practice, or maybe 4.5 years into my practice. And, you know, everyone that I came across, were like, wow, your story's so great. You'd be such a great teacher. Think about how many people you can inspire, blah, 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 blah. And I kind of stumbled into yoga teacher training, on the backs of that, on the backs of all those people that said, this is really your next logical step.
Uh-huh.
Not really thinking as much about it, not really even knowing that I wanted to teach. But for me, it was a place or a concept where I can learn more. I can learn the whys and the hows and what's really going on in your body and all that kind of stuff. So for me, that's what caused me to go into training. The stars happened to align of the timing of it all, and it just worked. This was the fall of 2016. Yeah, because this October it'll be 2 years for me teaching, and or November rather, and I got there and met some really incredible people and some amazing teachers. And my training was through I didn't go to Bikram's training. I went to the Raja Yoga Academy training. A guy by the name of Craig Villani, exactly, who had run Bikram's training for, I think, about 11 or so odd years. And the place that I had been practicing at the time said, well, if you want to teach, this is where you have to go. I didn't know Craig. I didn't know, the people that I had met in this yoga were primarily people that I met through my two teaching mentors, as I mentioned, Mary and Isaac Garcia. So I didn't know Craig and I didn't know any of that group. But I'm like, all right, well, I guess if I want to teach, this is where I have to go. So it was just kind of that I wanted in that.
Yeah.
I'd never met Bikram, but I've never met anybody like Craig. This is a guy that there were 42 people in my training. I watched this guy look into 42 people and see their strengths, see their patterns, see their weaknesses, and pull them out of people, almost like a Rain Man type clairvoyant ability that to this day, I haven't met anybody that's been able to do that. And the first half of that training, it was a 6-week training, 500 hours. My days pretty much started at about 5:30 and ended every day at about 1 a.m. Super intense. Was not prepared for it. So many people that had gone to Bikram's training said, "Oh, don't worry about it. You'll learn the dialogue and Craig's training. It's called the outline. You'll learn it when you get there. Don't worry about it." And I'd studied it and practiced, but as I've gotten older, I'm 50 now. My learning style has changed with my age. I think I've become a much more experiential learner than when I was a kid who was in law school and can sit down and memorize 1,000 pages and spit them out the next day on an exam and be done with them. I don't have that ability anymore, and that was kind of how I thought I was going to get carried through this training. So when that didn't work, I was in like full on fight or flight for the first half of that training. Words wouldn't come out of my mouth. Words wouldn't go into my head. I'd get up on that box and, we wouldn't just do these postures or deliver these postures one or two times. I mean, we would do each posture 30, 40 times. And I'd get up there and I'd open my mouth and tears would just roll down my face and nothing would come out. And I speak in front of 200-300 people. I speak to kids at schools, at synagogues, at churches, university students about overcoming obstacles and dealing with change and, depression, anxiety. I have zero problem speaking in front of people. But something about this was so incredibly sacred to me that I had just built such a barrier in my head, almost an insurmountable one, that for the first half of this training, aside from doing 2 classes a day, sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night, dealing with things that I thought I put to bed, from this accident, before the accident, things from my childhood, everything just came out at that time. It wasn't abusive. It wasn't staying up till 4 a.m. watching Bollywood movies. There was none of that kind of stuff that was going on. But I was in a physical, mental, spiritual crisis, not really knowing which way up was, full on fight or flight for the first 3 weeks. I packed my bag to go home 3 or 4 times. Once I even called an Uber. I was talked off the ledge by everybody from Craig to John Salvatore to Lucas Miles to, anyone that you could think of in the Bikram world that was affiliated with this training was talking me off the ledge from going home.
So what's going on in your head at this point? Are you thinking, I'm not cut out for this? Or are you thinking, I'm not ready for this? There's something different going on here?
Yeah, I was in so much pain. I was in a lot of physical pain. I have body work done on me probably 2, sometimes even more, 3 times a week because of all my issues. There wasn't time for that there, number one. You just didn't have time. You barely had time to eat.
Yeah.
And then the mental stuff that I was going through with, not being able to get these words out, not being able to digest this stuff, being on the small bus for the first time in my life. It was really, and then all the other stuff that was coming up. So all of that stuff was like the perfect storm of, oh my God. And, really what it boiled down to for me and what helped me make the turn to actually staying was about midway through the training was, it was the transition from, I want to be here. I went there for everybody else. I went there for everybody else's reasons. You'd be a great teacher. You could inspire people. You're going to be one, all that stuff. That's not enough to keep you at a training like that. It really wasn't a yoga teacher training. It was. It was a yoga teacher training, and I walked out of there, with a certificate, and now I'm teaching this yoga. But I like to call this training extreme life skill, leadership, consciousness training disguised as yoga teacher training, because that's really what it was. It really forced you to not just look in the mirror, but actually see what you're looking at in the mirror. And a lot of times there's things that you think are you, that are part of you, that really aren't you. They're just your patterns, your habits, how you respond to extreme stress, whether it's in that room at 105 degrees or whether it's outside of that room in traffic when some guy's honking at you or cut you off, or some guy jumps in front of you in a line, or it was that. And that turning point for me was, man, I'm here for me. I'm going to do this. I still didn't know if I was going to teach it, but I finally midway through decided that I needed to be there for me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be there for me. And when that happened, that was when it changed. That was when everything kind of morphed into, okay, and then it took on a different meaning and a different light to me. Yeah. I'd like to go back for those first 3 weeks because they were a blur right now, and I'd like to go back and learn what I missed. But
I think that's
because I was there, but I wasn't there.
I think that's a powerful takeaway for the whole audience of this show. Is if you're being motivated by other people, extrinsic motivations, that can take you so far. But then as soon as you get to the place where you got to dig deep, it's got to come from inside. It's got to be the intrinsic motivation. And it's like you said, that can apply in the yoga room, that can apply in the traffic light, but ultimately when you hit that turmoil, when you hit the conflict, you got to have a reason in yourself for doing what you're doing, or else it just crumbles.
No, it's not real. And it's just that, it's, again, call it God, the universe, whatever, but it's all right. How are you going to deal with it now? What if I take this away? Yeah. You still have faith? You still going to make it? How about I take this away? How about now? You still believe? And that's kind of what that was for me, because I came in there thinking, well, my practice is fine. I'll be able to do this. I was worried most about the physical demanding, part of the training.
Yeah.
But, the mental stuff was, could be just as challenging, if not more so, than the physical stuff. But when that stuff was married, it was bam. It was the perfect storm. And it was a compassionate, caring environment. There was no one messing with me or trying to, push you. No, nobody was trying to really, I know you hear stories about many of the trainings of different, in different parts of, in the yoga world, where it was like, well, we have to break you down before we build you up. It wasn't any of that. It was all of me. It was me breaking me down and me building me up. I wouldn't wish what I went through on anybody, my worst enemy, but I wouldn't change a thing. Okay. Similar to my journey with this accident and where I'm at right now, as opposed to where I was before the accident, I call it the best, worst experience of my life. Many people go through life, from a top of the well down perspective, standing at the top of the well, looking down, going, wow, looks like it's pretty deep down there. Well, it's a little different when you're at the bottom of the well looking up. It's a hell of a lot deeper. And anybody that's gone through shit in their lives, physical, mental, trauma, anything, anybody that has been through shit, and no one gets out of this unscathed, everybody gets their heaping helping at some point in time, understands this. And it's a mechanism for me, because many people that practice this type of yoga are people that are going in there to heal from something, body, mind, spirit, something. And they've been through it, and they understand what it's like to see life from the bottom of the well up. And that's a mechanism to connect and to bind people together. And it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't discriminate race, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender, nothing. People that have been through shit, that have seen life from the bottom of the well up, they get it. They see and they understand that, it's a process. And depending on where you're at in that process, it doesn't matter as long as you keep moving forward. And, the only constant in all of it is going to be, it's going to change. And sometimes you're on top and sometimes you're on bottom. But if you can keep that perspective of just saying, you know what, no matter what, I'm constant. I'm just going to flow. I'm going to be like water, my friend, like Bruce Lee. That's the concept that, that I walked away with, from all this, and a concept that I couldn't have learned I don't think any other way. So I'm not that smart to learn it by reading in a book. I need to live it. And that's, and that's kind of how I learn the best way, I think.
Yeah. Super, super powerful stuff. Thank you for sharing all of that. And something else that I touched on in your little introduction at the beginning of the interview was that I know that you're also doing some advocacy work to remove the stigma around cannabis and cannabis products for health and medicinal use.
Absolutely.
Could you share a little bit about the work that you're doing to that end, and maybe, a triumph that you've had along the way?
Yeah, my wife, another one of the many amazing things that came out of this accident, throughout this whole time of me battling, to live, to die, and come back again. My wife was battling with the insurance company, trying to get them to cover all of our bills at the time. My wife at the time had taught political science, American government, and the Constitution at a local university for about the past 14 years, called Northeastern in Illinois. And that was her background. The way things had turned after the accident, and I came back to the living and so forth and so on, a seat in our local area in the Illinois House opened up, and the party, the Democratic Party, came to my wife and said, "You'd be perfect for this. You've been fighting insurance companies since your husband's accident. You want a platform to do it on a larger scale? Come right in, and why don't you run for this seat?" And she was like, "Huh?" So my wife ran for the Illinois House. She's now in her third term and actually running for the Illinois Senate this next election coming up. And one of the issues, aside from insurance, which has now been her platform since she's been in there, now she actually chairs the insurance committee in the Illinois House. So any insurance laws coming into Illinois affecting health or safety or workers' comp go through my wife, a woman who had no experience in any of this before, a woman who the insurance company said will never even get elected, now chairs insurance in the House, and they hate her. And it's, if you're hated by insurance companies, you're doing something right. But in her first term, she was one of the bills that she co-sponsored was medical cannabis in Illinois, and we have a truly medicinal statute in Illinois. It's not wink wink, nudge nudge. It's a purely medical based statute, pre-existing relationship with a doctor, one of a number of enumerated conditions that are listed in the law. It's a real deal cannabis, and I'm all for recreational use, but this is purely medical, and I think a lot of people in this country sit on a fence, and they think it's all bullshit, and they think it's all like California was before, where it was anybody got a card. If your ass hurts, you got a card. If you had a pain in your eye, you got a card. It was just simply a mechanism to skirt the law. In Illinois, it was really medical, and I think it really needs to be done that way in lots of places because people need to see the medicinal benefits of cannabis, compared to opioid narcotics. And someone who was on all these opioid narcotics, I could tell you, cannabis it's like night and day from a standpoint of there's no side effects. I'm not saying certain people can't have side effects. I'm not saying if you don't have an addictive personality that you can't be addicted to something that, no different than food, sugar, or anything if you have addictive personality. But I'm just saying comparatively, it's night and day. So my wife co-sponsored medical cannabis in Illinois, and I was fortunately able to get appointed to a board. It was the Illinois Medical Cannabis Advisory Board. So I sat on this board as a patient advocate with a bunch of master of the universe doctors, probably the most hyper-educated board of all boards in the history of the world. I mean, you had the head of pain from Northwestern, the head of cancer at University of Chicago, the head of AIDS research at Loyola, the head of integrative medicine was the chair of our board from Rush North Shore. So you had these master of the universe doctors that could be doing anything with their time on a non-paid board, reviewing thousands of pages of documents to add additional conditions to enable people to get access to medical cannabis. Unfortunately, we have a governor still very similar to our president who thinks that it's a gateway drug to heroin, and has done everything in his power to make sure that none of the stuff that we had passed had gotten through. It happened before this governor got elected. That's how the law came into effect. So it's been a battle up until that point. But I got really involved in that because I've seen so many cases, kids with epilepsy that take CBD oil that are suffering from 100+ grand mal seizures a day, take CBD oil and they have 3 seizures a day or none, and it's like 85% effective. I mean, if there was a pharmaceutical drug that was that that had that kind of effectiveness, it would be $1 billion drug overnight. Drugs 20-30% effective are multi-million-dollar drugs.
Right.
So I've seen
the FDA
some of the
doesn't need
people.
to see efficacy anywhere near that high in order to give it the stamp of approval. So.
Oh, exactly. And because there's no research, because it's still a scheduled drug, and there's more research happening now as the states legalize and countries like Israel do tons of research. It's happening, but it's just not happening fast enough. So for me, I'm a huge advocate. I think it's medicine in the purest, truest, holistic sense of the word, no different than the yoga. And to me, the two of those things have really helped to give me my life back. Do I still have to take things on occasion? Absolutely. And I'm not someone who says all meds are bad. I'm not someone, who's going to, tell you that vaccines cause autism. I'm not going down that road, but I believe that, if using cannabis in your arsenal of treatments to deal with whatever it is that you're dealing with could cause you to take 1 or 2 less Vicodin a day, or 2 less Norco, or take less X, and you could function a little bit more normally without being a vacant shell on the couch, then that's a good thing. And that's kind of the approach that I take. The act in Illinois is called, the Compassionate Care Act. Compassion is actually in the name of the statute, because the whole point of it is, people that live and suffer in pain, how can you help them in a compassionate way? And basically what that means is, through lack of evidence or research, is this the compassionate thing to do? So most of the pain related stuff that we ever dealt with, we all passed unanimously because it's pain, whether it's post-surgical, whether it's chronic, whether it's, migraines, whether it's, pain is pain. And that, we didn't pass it for things just like general anxiety disorder. We didn't pass it for, it was truly a medical, standard and approach to reviewing these conditions and adding them to the act. And it was fascinating to me. I learned a ton, and now even believe more wholeheartedly than I did before that it's truly medicine.
Well, I know you said before that you don't consider yourself an inspiration, and I do appreciate your humility. But I think that your story is extremely impressive, and I really admire you for using this platform, this life that you've got, to be vocal about the issues that are meaningful to you. So, Michael, one last question. Apart from getting your message out on this podcast today, what are you doing today to live your Dharma?
I'm teaching this yoga for the last 3 months. I've been traveling around the country teaching. Austin, Nashville, Key West, Kansas City, New Orleans, Boulder, Durham. Next month, later this month, I'll be in New Hampshire. And for me, it's been a way to connect to people, everybody. We have so much more in common than we have in difference with one another. And I think the sooner we all realize that and connect on a one-to-one level, no real meaningful change in this world, in our country, anywhere happens from the top down. It happens from the bottom up. That's change. That's where change comes from. That's how change happens. And this is a mechanism to create change for me. And I leave these places and they're thanking me, and I'm thanking them. Getting up on that box for 90 minutes for me is 90 minutes of self-therapy. Okay, so it's selfish that they're so happy and thankful that I'm coming out there. I'm like, you know what? Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. I'm grateful. I'm the one who's thankful. No, we're thankful, and that's kind of the thing. But
yeah, a big
that's
happy spiral of gratitude everywhere. It's all good.
It is. I wake up. The first thing I say every morning is thank you, and then my day goes on from there. And that's truly, how I choose to live my life. And I'll tell you what, you live your life that way, whatever you put out there comes back to you tenfold in ways that you can't even fathom, because it's done from a pureness of heart. It's done without the expectation of receiving anything in return. And it's done because it's just right. And I don't care what religion you believe in, every single one of them says, help people that need help. If you have more than you need, share, leave something in a better position than when you found it. And that's the concept, I think, that unfortunately, in our 24-hour news cycles, we've lost to some extent. And it's my goal to try to unite people and realize that, that it's still there. It's just a little hidden right now in the quagmire of an angry orange orangutan in the White House. So that's my That's my Dharma. That's my goal. That's my
All right.
motivation.
Keep teaching. Well, I see you in Chicago for the vacation this summer.
Unfortunately, I cannot. I'll do my best to pop in. I think I'm committed to some of those dates, but I'll
Okay.
definitely be at Nationals in Madison, Wisconsin. So I don't know if I'll see you there. But
Yes, you will. You will see me
okay,
there.
then I will see you in Madison, Wisconsin in June, my friend.
Okay, before we wrap off though, that concludes the interview, but now we've got the prana round. In the prana round, I'm going to ask you 6 rapid fire questions and ask you to answer in at most 1 sentence, maybe even 1 word. You ready to
Okay,
go?
all right.
Okay. Question number 1, in 1 word, why do you practice yoga?
Self-love.
What's your favorite yoga pose and why?
Trigonasana triangle, because I love how it makes me feel.
What's the single best cue or piece of advice you've ever received from a yoga teacher?
Breathe.
Recommend 1 book, modern or ancient, for our audience.
Uh, I Am the Power of Discovering Who You Really Are by Howard Falco.
Okay, I've never heard that one. And is yoga for everyone?
Absolutely.
Okay, Michael, last question. How can our audience get in touch with you, and how can we support you in your Dharma?
Facebook, Instagram. I'm not as sophisticated as many of your other interviewees. So Facebook, Instagram, and be kind. Help the world. Do something good for somebody every single day of your life, and eventually, it'll all connect us.
Thank you, Michael. It's been a joy having you on. I hope to catch you around the world.
Me too, Henry. Me too. Great to talk to you. Look forward to seeing you next month.
If you got something out of this episode, if you like Dharma Talk and want to keep it going, please do me a huge favor and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. I know it's not the most convenient thing to do, but it makes all the difference in getting this show out there and more visible to other people who can benefit from it. And hey, if you've got feedback or ideas or you want to get in touch with me, you can do that on Instagram at HenryWins. Otherwise, I'll talk to you next week. And until then, keep living your Dharma.